In this video, we want to go over in Nintex Forms how to take some basic controls such as single line text, choice, yes, no, or date time controls, and how those are configured on your Nintex form to get the best results. So what we want to do in this list is open up the Nintex Forms designer, and up top in your ribbon, click on Nintex Forms. You'll have the option to choose between responsive or classic forms. When you don't have to do that much customization for a custom code or custom layout, you can go through the responsive form, which will allow your form to render based on the viewport of the device that is rendering that form. So we'll choose responsive form. Once we do that, we're presented with the vanilla Nintex Forms layout. The only column that we had in our list at the moment was a title column, which is single line text. So by default, that will be the column that shows up. If we had added any other columns to our list before opening up the Nintex Forms designer, those columns would have been represented as controls on the Forms design canvas for us by default. However, if we create this form and then close and save or publish this form, then go back to our list and add new columns, those columns will not automatically be represented as controls on the designer canvas for us. We'll have to go in later and grab them from the list column section and add those connected controls to the designer canvas. So let's get started with some basic controls. We already have the single line text box control, and if I click on it, you'll see in the ribbon the single line text box heads up configuration portion comes up, but if you want to get more in depth with the control, just double click on it and you'll get additional options. For configuring the single line text box, you'll have a name value, and the name value is used to locate that control later on or reference it in a rule if needed. The title control will be the title of the actual control itself and how that appears on the form. A description can be a short description that you provide for the control. And then the connected to section is the column in which the data collected in this control will write back to the respective column in the list. You can also apply a default source value. If you have already specified a default source value in the list column configuration settings back in SharePoint, it will adhere to that. If you did not and you want to specify one on the control settings within Nintex Forms, click on specify default value and then you can enter in that default value, even going as far as using form variables or other types of runtime methods or inline functions within the default value source. But for example here, we'll just use the connected fields default value control, which is blank. After that, we've got our appearance section here where we can determine if we want this control to be visible or enabled. So visible means that the control appears on the form, where you can set yes or no, or actually build an inline expression where a condition has to be met to show that actual control. And the same applies for enabled. So enabled actually disabled the control if the setting of enabled is set to no, which means that if you click on that control, nothing's going to happen. It's in disabled control. It'll still appear on the form, but you'll not be able to access or use that control. If we move over to the validation section, you can add a required error message to denote that this control is required, and with not filled in, then a custom error message will appear on that form. You can also do compare to, where you compare it to a controller value. And then you can also build in range validation if you're going to use a type of range value in here. And if you want to apply regular expression to make sure that there's pattern matching to the value that's entered into the single line text box, just say yes, and then you can actually build out the regular expression here and then put in the error message if that pattern has not been met within the regular expression itself. And we'll move that over to no. Collapse validation, and then take a look at advanced, where you can actually denote this as a password field, where instead of actually typing in a value, you can have the dots or the asterisks appear within the text box to cover up the field that's actually being entered in. You can have help text appear, almost like a tooltip, when you hover over the control. You can actually apply the control mode, so do you want this to automatically display, or do you want it to only be in edit or display modes of the forms, and then you can convert the empty string to null, give null display text, and then if you are using this in the Nintex mobile application, you can actually take a single line text box and make it enabled for barcode scanning, where it can leverage the camera's APIs in the mobile device and be able to scan a barcode and then write back the barcode value. And then below the null display text, we have the enable barcode scanning feature, which if you are using the Nintex mobile application and you want to enable a single line text field to instead hook up to the mobile application's camera APIs to take a picture of a barcode you wish to scan and then write back the numeric value from that barcode, you can do that by simply checking this area to be yes, or even writing an expression for some condition that has to be met. Now, the appearance validation and advanced sections within the controls will appear in multiple control types. They may differ a little bit as to what offerings are available for appearance validation and advanced, depending on the control type in which you're using, but become familiarized with these sections within your control settings.